Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. In this video I'll be talking about the Kuro deck that I piloted to a first place finish at my local tournament. There were 17 people that showed up and it was the first week of constructed OP04. So why did I play Kuro? There's a lot of new cards in set 4 and a lot of new decks. So yeah, it's kind of an odd choice to bring to the first week of locals, right? But the reason that I played Kuro was because I looked at the 10-drop Doflamingo and I was having a lot of fun playing it in the green and purple Doflamingo, and I was thinking this card is really powerful. What other options do I have to play this card? So of course I looked at Kid and I looked at a few other green leaders like Odin, which can also restand 2 Dawn at the end of your turn after playing the 10-drop, kind of like the green-purple Dofi. But you do have to pitch a Wano card in order to do so. But that just wasn't working out for me. Hand disadvantage is just always going to be a problem for Odin. So hopefully he gets more support in the future. But then I thought about it. I was like, why not just play it in Kuro? Because I found that green-purple Doflamingo is pretty good into yellow. And it's mostly because of the 10-drop Doflamingo. And one of the bad matchups for Kuro is yellow. So I was like, why not just give Kuro a better endgame, putting in 4 Doflamingo? That was my reason for playing Kuro. I just tested with it with the thought that, oh, the 10-drop Doflamingo kind of just gives me an endgame because I can play it and freeze the leader and 2 big swings. And on my following turn, I can swing with a 10 and 2 big Kuro swings to close out the game. So there's a lot that Kuro has going for it. It's a really consistent deck and it's very aggressive. One of the most aggressive decks that I've played. But yeah, let me just go through the list. I will start with the leader. Activate main, rest 3 Dawn, and you may rest 2 of your characters with the East Blue type and set your leader to active. And then rest 1 of your opponent's characters with a cost of 5 or less. So this is really powerful. You have a lot of triggers to put East Blue bodies on board to be able to rest 2 bodies for his effect. And being able to rest a blocker on the second effect is really good. So another reason why I chose this deck was because I didn't want to lose to Queen. And I think that this deck does really well into Queen because you can rest its blockers that it might get off trigger for the second swing, or you have other cards to rest blockers as well, but the leader ability just keeps it really aggressive. And I've talked about this before, I really like that the leader ability kind of ties in with his character because you're resting your own characters, kind of sacrificing them. Kuro doesn't care about his crew, he's selfish, so it's pretty cool that that is his leader ability. Next up we have Nami. Nami is a searcher for the deck. She looks at the top 5 cards of your deck, reveals up to 1 green East Blue type card other than Nami, and then you put it into your hand and put the rest at the bottom of your deck. So it's a 2-cost searcher, which is a little bit pricier, but Nami also has a trigger to play this card. So you get to use that effect coming off a trigger, and it feels really good to hit a Nami off of trigger, putting a searcher on board for free. Next up we have Pearl. Pearl is just an East Blue blocker. There's nothing too special about it. It does cost 2 and 2000 power and it has a plus 1000. It's the only blocker in the deck, so it definitely comes in handy toward the end game, but I'm never afraid to rest Pearl in order to use Kuro's ability. It's really nice to close out the game by having either a Nami or a Pearl in hand and being able to swing as big as possible by just dropping one of these as your second East Blue character that you need for Kuro's effect. Next up, I just played 2 copies of Chopper. It's just a 2k counter. It does have a somewhat useful ability, but I'd never really use it. But it is Dawn times 1. When attacking, rest up to 1 of your opponent's characters with a cost of 2 or less. So I could see this possibly being played on the first turn to maybe deal with Trafalgar Law, but yeah, like I said, mostly a 2k counter, and I play it at 2 just because I felt like I was low on 2k counters and I wanted to have a healthy number of 10. Next up I have Sham, and I really like Sham. His on-play ability, if your leader has the East Blue type, rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 2 or less. And if you don't have Butchie in play, play up to 1 Butchie card from your hand. So this combos really well with Butchie. It not only rests for Butchie's effect, which I'll get to later, but it also gets 2 bodies onto the board for only 3 Dons. So if you have no East Blue characters on board, you just play Sham down at the end of the game for 3, and then you're able to load up the rest onto Kuro and keep the 3 active for his ability, of course. But it's a really nice ability, and you can get rid of low-cost blockers with the combo as well. So yeah, and in a pinch, Sham isn't a bad attacker. You just attach 1 Don onto him and swing. Moving on, there are 4 Ezos in this deck. So Ezo, it's not searchable, but it's a 2k counter that has a really good on-play ability. Rest up to one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less. So it rests most blockers that decks will play. She isn't a card that I usually play until I try to go for the game, but mostly Ezo's just a 2k counter with good utility. Next up we have Geen, and Geen is a card that I really like to play on my 4 Don turn if I'm going second. It has an on play to rest 2 of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less. So once again, we are resting our opponent's characters with our on play abilities, which is huge. And he's also a 5k body on board, and being able to rest 2 characters, it's just another card that you can play at the end of the game. If they put out multiple blockers, you just rest 2 and then you just swing for game. Geen is a really powerful card. One of my favorite cards in this deck for sure. Next up we have our East Blue 2k counter in Hachan. He's a 2k counter, but he actually has pretty decent stats. He's a 4 cost with 4000 power. 4 costs is kind of a lot for 4000 power, but he does have a trigger. If your leader has the East Blue type, play this card. So it's just so good in this deck to be able to play cards without any drawbacks from trigger into play. So you think of yellow, they usually have to pitch a card, so you don't have to do that here. You just play cards off of triggers onto the board, and it's really strong. Just like Sham, Hachan isn't a terrible attacker. You just throw 1 Don under him and he's able to swing a leader. So yeah, Hachan, 2k counter for East Blue. It's searchable and has a trigger and decent stats. Next up we have Butchie, and I explained Butchie a little bit when I explained Sham. You can play Butchie from hand if you play Sham, and that's if you don't have another Butchie in play. But yeah, you rest characters with a cost of 2 or less with Sham, and then you play down Butchie, and his on-play effect is to KO up to one of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 2 or less. So the combo of the two, I see it often enough, and it's just so good into low-cost blockers and searchers, because searchers can be a problem sometimes, so it's good to get rid of them. And the reason why searchers can be a problem is because if you rest for Kuro's ability, let's say you rest a Nami, then they can just swing into your Nami with a Pudding or another Nami or something like that. So it's good to rest and get rid of some of those searchers. Sham and Butchie, I really like the combo in this deck, and Butchie is another 5k power, so you can swing into leader with a 0 Don investment. So yeah, really like Sham and Butchie in this deck. Next up is Karubi. Karubi is not a character that I play from hand often. He's usually the first 1k counter that comes out of my hand, but he's in this deck at a 4 copy because he's another body that you can play immediately from life. It does have a really powerful ability on play if your leader has the East Blue type, rest up to one of your opponent's characters. So this could become relevant to play from hand if you have a blocker that you can't rest with other abilities in this deck, such as maybe a 7-drop Luffy. But hitting this off trigger feels so good, especially when your opponent's going for game, and let's say they have 1 swing left and it's a 10-drop Big Mom. You just rest it with Karubi if it's in your life, and that could be a game-winning trigger for you. Next up we have Chu. It's another character that I will pitch for the 1k counter that I need, but it is another trigger body. So this deck has so many bodies that you can play off trigger, and I maximize that to its fullest potential. But Chu does have a pretty good on-play ability, KO up to one of your opponent's rested characters with a cost of 4 or less. So I do play Chu from hand whenever I don't have Krieg. Removing mid-range bodies protects your characters. So you're really trying to get rid of characters that can attack into your characters, because if you do that and then you use leader ability and the only thing they have to clear your board is their leader, then that can be really powerful. So Chu is a card I'm more likely to play from hand, but it's mostly in there to maximize my triggers, like I said, and it does help control the board just a little bit. It did win me, actually, the final round of the tournament, and I'll discuss that later, but it's another trigger that can win a game for you. Next up is Krieg. Krieg is too strong to play any less than 4. He doesn't have any counter, but on your 6th Dawn turn, you play him and you can pop 2 bodies that are rested with a cost of 4 or less, and that's really huge. But also playing him on your 6th Dawn turn, if you've managed to whittle your opponent's hand size down by just outspeeding them with a bunch of attacks, then you can land a double attack on your following turn, because Krieg has an ability Dawn times 1. This character gains double attack. So he's already at a pretty healthy 7k. Throw 1 Dawn under him and he's an 8k. And however much Dawn you need to double attack. And that's where the speed of this deck comes into play. You can just blitz your opponent with double attack and other swings throughout the course of the early game, and then you get them down to 1 life really fast, and then you can just double swing, and then you can just close out the game. So yeah, when this deck is rolling, it can really snowball, and your opponent will just get overwhelmed really quickly thanks to Krieg's double attack and all of the triggers that you have at your disposal in this deck. So next up, I've already talked about this card quite a bit, but the 10-drop Doflamingo just gives you a really good endgame. If your opponent's waiting until they get to their bigger bodies and then they take a turn of swinging with those bigger bodies, then you can just play the 10-drop, freeze, and at that point, surely you've taken enough life to where on your following turn, have a 10-drop, 10k swing, and then you can double swing with Kuro to close out the game. So Doflamingo just increases the end game for Kuro, and because he's not searchable and because he's kind of a game-breaking card, I do max him out at 4. But yeah, it's one of the best boss monsters, and it's one of my favorite cards in the new set. So I wanted to find a home for him, and I think that he fits pretty well with Kuro. And lastly, I have the Punk Gibson. Just like Karubi, this card has the ability to rest one of your opponent's characters off of trigger. So this is any character. And of course, it is a counter event, so that's always good as well. You rest 2 Dawn, and your leader or up to one of your characters gains plus 4,000 power for the duration of the battle. Then you rest one of your opponent's characters with a cost of 4 or less. So yeah, that is the list, and as you can see, there are a lot of triggers and a lot of cards that rest characters. There's just so much utility in this deck, so many on-play effects, and it's a ton of fun to play. But it's also really underrated. It's so fast, it can blitz your opponent, and it's probably the only deck I can think of that can match yellow with the triggers. There are some cards that a lot of people have been playing in Kuro that I do not have, and I'll just go over those. These will be the cards that I would consider. So the first card I would consider is the 1-drop Alvida. She is just a vanilla 1-drop 3k power with 1000 counter, and the reason she's so good is because you can drop her and then you can drop 2 of them and just rest both, and you can load up with Kuro. So I'm definitely not downplaying how good that could possibly be at the end of the game, because you just have the ability to maximize your leader swing. But I think that I get enough bodies for free off of trigger, and I do have the Pearl and the Nami and the Shambuchi combo to be able to rest those, and I can still have a pretty big swing with Kuro. You know, more power is always good, but in my testing, it's just not needed. The next card I would consider for this deck is Django. Django is a 5-cost 6,000 power, and he doesn't have a counter, which is actually the reason I don't play him. His on-play ability, you actually get to choose one, set up to one of your East Blue type leader or character cards with a cost of 6 or less as active. So that is actually pretty good, because you get to protect your bodies while playing a pretty decent attacker, and you could possibly swing with a Krieg twice, or you can swing with your leader twice. And the second ability rests this character and up to one of your opponent's characters. So it's another card that can just rest, but I don't find that this is necessary. There's just a lot that can rest. And then another card you can mention is the new Kuro from set 4. It's a 6-drop 8k power with a 1000 counter vanilla. It's a really nice looking card, and it has really good stats. I just find the Krieg much more important to play on my 6th on turn because of the double attack and because its on play ability to KO up to 2 rested characters. So I just find that Kuro isn't really needed. I think there is a world where you can just take out the 10-drop Dofi and put in Kuro as your top end, just an alternative play in case you don't have the Krieg, to be able to play that. And then of course you have more characters that you can rest for Kuro's ability, but I don't see why you would want to rest the character Kuro because it's a really good attacker in itself. But it does give you an option, and you're less likely to whiff off of a Nami search. So I could see why you'd want to play this card just going all in on the leader ability, but I just think that the 10-drop Dofi is what makes this deck competitive. So just some quick advice for the deck. Just let your characters go, treat them as blockers. And your mulligan, you want to see that Nami or that Pearl at least, or a combination of Sham and Butchie to be able to play. Just make sure that you have something to play, and kind of like yellow, mulligan way if you have your handful of triggers. It is always nice to see that Krieg or that Doflamingo in hand, but it's more important to get your early game rolling. So yeah, definitely try to find a Nami searcher on your opening hand. Another bit of advice that I think is actually really important here. The 10-drop Dofi, sometimes you can win a game without playing him, so don't fall in love with the idea of playing that character, because then you're out of options, right? You are freezing 3 characters, but sometimes it's better to just play down your East Blue characters and use Kuro's ability to stay aggressive. So yeah, while it is a game-breaking card toward the end of the game, sometimes it's just not necessary. So don't fall into that trap of, oh, I'm at my 10 on turn, I have to play the 10-drop Dofi. So let's go through the matchups now. Law is pretty favorable, right? Because you're resting their board. Definitely want to choke them out of hand and go after board. Law can still outspeed by getting a bunch of searchers early. But if they're not seeing those searchers and you're just they're just playing down characters and you can control their board, choke them out of hand, and then the game is pretty easy from there. Shambuchi is really good into Law. Geen is really good into Law. Chu is pretty good into Law. Krieg is really good into Law. Also, hold back your Punk Gibsons to be able to rest characters as well. So there's just so many options to rest their board, KO their board, and then you can worry about swinging into them when they're out of hand because they're a 4-life leader. So yeah, that's a very favorable matchup. The other matchup I'll talk about, definitely yellow was a problem for this deck because they just had a better endgame than you, because they could just drain your life with 10-drop Big Moms. There's a lot that they can do with Katakuri to be able to take away your Krieg, which they still can. But the 10-drop Dofi just makes that matchup a little bit more manageable. I would say the matchup overall is still slightly unfavorable, but now with the 10 drop, you play it, you freeze 3 of their bodies, and then you can just rush them down with your 10 drop and then your Kuro double swing. Definitely don't be afraid in that matchup to go for the double attack with Krieg. Yes, they do have triggers, but if they have a blocker, you can always rest that, you know, if it's a Sanji or something. But I actually managed to beat 2 Katakuri decks at locals this past Friday, and what I was able to do was I got them down to 0 or 1 life before they hit their 10 drop Big Mom turn, so they could have dropped their 10 drop, but they wouldn't have been able to defend themselves, and I burned their hand pretty quickly with this deck. Just going through my tournament run, I beat a Katakuri, a Crocodile, and then I actually played a Kuro mirror in round 3. There were 2 undefeated Kuros going into round 3, and I was able to win the mirror because I had 10 drop Dofi and he did not. And then in the final match, I played against Law, and I already explained Law is a pretty good matchup, but that was actually my toughest match of the day. He just had a lot of searchers early, so it was hard to control his board, and then I did make that misplay of playing the 10 drop Dofi and freezing a few of his characters, but I forgot that he could shambles. For some reason that didn't cross my mind, so I kind of threw the game, but I was able to get lucky with the Chew trigger to be able to KO his Rush Zoro that he needed to win the game. So yeah, I do concede that, but I had the game the turn before. Instead of playing the 10 drop Dofi, all I had to do was rest my opponent's blockers and then double swing with Kuro. But that is my Kuro deck. So it's a deck that I think that more people should try out. I think it has some pretty decent matchups, and I think that it can definitely do some damage in this format. I think the biggest thing that it has going for it is just being able to rest a lot of blockers, because there's so many blockers in this format. We're getting more and more of them, and a lot of them are triggers. So just being able to deal with that and having power on your side as well, because this deck, you look at it on the surface, it doesn't have much power, right? Because all you have is Krieg and Dofi, but no, this deck, it throws out hard swings at your opponent with the leader. So this deck kind of emphasizes bigger swings, and I think that that's really important in this format. But I would definitely consider this a rogue deck, and I think that it can win locals. I want a locals. I think it can make a deep tournament run as well in a 500 person regional. It's a deck that's just really consistent. If you're looking for consistency, this deck has it. If you're looking for speed, this deck has it. Like, you can just snowball and win matches in, 10 minutes. And it's a deck that can capitalize on your opponent having a bad hand. So, yeah, that's about all I have to say about Kuro, though. Give this video a like if you enjoyed it, and consider subscribing for more One Piece card game content. And I'll see you all in the next video.